Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Charlene with Olive Street Designs, and I'm super excited about this makeover. This dresser was chosen from my inventory, a fantastic solid wood dresser, 6 drawers, real simple design, but we're going to change things up a bit. This base is not quite what the client wants. She was asking that I go ahead and straighten it out, so we're going to have to change that. This is a Sumter dresser. This is made in the United States in South Carolina. So just a nice solid piece. Dovetail drawer boxes, solid wood. And I already got paid 10 cents. Anyway, let's get started with this project. I'm super excited to dive in. First thing I need to do though is clean everything up. And I'm going right in with a degreaser. And the reason I clean before I get started is because I want to remove any of the years of furniture polish, dust, grime, just stuff, because it can actually impact the adhesion of my products that I'm going to be putting on here. So I like to just start with a clean palette. Why not? So I get everything cleaned up, and then I've got to get this hardware off. This is not the style. It's not one that I prefer. It's not one my client likes. So I've got to get it off. And the first challenge, of course, is getting it off. I took the screw out. Sometimes it's just the screw that's the challenge. And this one actually was interesting. I don't usually get this style. I call this kind of a batwing style that has a nail. So not only is it screwed, but it also has a small setting nail, and that nail just helps to keep those from turning. But it provided a little bit of a challenge getting them off. This is not a style that I'm like so excited to keep these and reuse on another project. So I did bend a little bit of them, as I'm taking them off, but that's okay. They didn't get too damaged, and I'll still donate these and send them on their way. After I got the hardware off, it was filthy behind them. Of course, they had never been taken off. Some of them had little spider webs behind them, dust behind them. So I needed to get that all cleaned off too. Once I got everything cleaned and dried, it's time to start working on the drawers. I love these kinds of drawer liners because sometimes I'm pulling out 50-year-old drawer liners and they don't come out very well. And besides the dime, I found a beautiful little earring. As I take these out, I'm numbering them. And what other gem did I just find? This is the cutest little seal. Now, I have a collection of cute little things that I find, and this is going in it. So this might be my little shop seal now. It's going to hang out on one of my shelves. I get all the drawers out, and this one in particular is covered in I don't know if those are rocks that are from like an aquarium, but there were rocks all over the place in this. Why would there be rocks in the dresser? I have no idea, but there was quite a few. But this is a good time once you get all the drawers out to just inspect everything. And wow, this is beautiful. Look at just solid wood drawer guides, everything. They were all in great shape, except I needed to get the rocks out and of course just get everything cleaned up. 50 or 60 years worth of dust. I don't know about you, but I don't usually take my drawers out and dust behind them, so they do get really dusty back there. So I get everything all dusted out and cleaned, even though, they're probably going to get dusty again. And then I'm going to get these off of the dollies. I put the dollies behind me so when I roll this thing backwards, I actually set it on the dollies. That way I can move this around in my shop. And it's time to address this base. So the base apparently had come off at some point and someone had nailed it and it was starting to come off again, so the nails were sticking out. So I'm hammering them back in. You can see them sticking up there. Now those would snag and they won't look good painted, and so I have to use this little nail pusher, and it just goes right over the head of the nail and you pound it in and it's going to push that nail down into the wood. Now I'm addressing the base first because my client does not like the curves of this base and she asked me to cut it. So I'm trying to see if I can, make this a more simple design. I've worked with this client multiple times. I have a really good idea of what it is she's looking for, what her style is, and I know that she's going to want something really simplified and pretty. So I go ahead and tape everything off because it gives me a really good visual as to where I'm cutting and what is it going to look like when it's done. And I spend the time to even mark out where I'm going to cut this. I even take the time to draw out my curves on the corners because I don't want to necessarily cut along the edge of the tape in that corner. I don't want it to be a blunt cut like that squared off. So I'm rounding that out. That will be really nice. So I stand back and I look at it and I go, yeah, this is the design that we're looking for. It'll give it a nice little lift. It's going to simplify everything. I think she'll really like this design. And then just as I'm getting ready to cut it, I look underneath because sometimes there are nails and things underneath, and I find the center support. That center support is thick. I'm grateful for it. I'm glad there's a lot of support. But if I cut that where I thought I was going to, you'll totally see it. And that is not a good look. You just don't want that hanging down in the front. So now I'm just sitting here contemplating, what am I going to do now? I grab a couple of boards because I'm thinking, well, if I make a new face of this, just that trim piece across the top, I have to go buy a board, but I thought I'll put two together so I can see the width of it. And I think that's my only choice. So off this comes. After I just got done setting the nails down in there and getting this reattached, I've got to take it back off. Again, solid piece of wood. It does not want to come off. Oh, I should have just left it alone. I wish I had done all of that before I got done making sure those nails were all secure. But I am pounding away. This does not want to come off. And if I have to leave and go back to my toolbox and get another tool, this thing's in trouble. So I go get my little demo bar, pound that in there. You know, when you're dealing with solid wood, sometimes it does not want to let go. But we're just continuing on. Of course, I break another piece of it off. There's no going back at this point. Even if I decided I wanted to reuse this was going to be a problem. So I am all in on whatever it is that I'm going to be able to create at this point that's going to fix this dresser. So I just continue to try to get that up under there so that I can lift that front plate off. And it's just a trim board that goes across the front. There's nothing structural about it. It doesn't touch the floor. It was there just to give that design. Even though it's a lovely piece of solid wood, it just had to go. So just getting the nails out. Of course, these are old and they just broke right off. This one started to come out and then it broke. The other one broke. So I had to get out a Dremel, and this has a little wheel on it. This one actually is for cutting metal, so it will work just fine on these nails. And just trimmed those off of there so that they'll fit flush, and off to Home Depot I go because I need some trim boards. This is 5 1/4 inches that I need. I went to go grab a measuring tape in the store, and I'm like, what is wrong with this? There's no numbers on it. I found the one defective measuring tape in the whole store. I almost bought it as a novelty because I'm like, should look like this. But the other one was broken. So, okay, I got one that I can actually have numbers on, and I went and found a board that's 6 inches, and I'm just going to have to make something. I have no idea at this point. So I decided to clamp this to a table. I got out my router. Now, using a router is not something I have done a lot of. And I'm putting a bit on here. This is a 5/32 OG bit. And I'm just going to router the edge of the board because I don't want it to be so blunt. So the router is going to just I'm essentially making a piece of baseboard. If you have, 6-inch baseboards in your house, this is what I'm doing. So I'm taking the router and I'm using this bit and I'm going across the very top edge just to round it off. And then I decided to put a fence up. You can see I have another board sitting up on top that's clamped, and my router now dropped down just a little bit further down that piece, and I grabbed a different bit. And this one actually just makes like this little trough. And again, I'm just trying to kind of simulate or emulate some baseboards. So I'm adding some dimension to it so it's not just this big flat piece of wood on there. So I got both of those things routered. And now I'm having to line the area where I'm going to have to cut this board. And again, I put a fence up. I've got my little circular saw. I'm going to run it up against the fence so I can rip this board and just readjust it because I was actually going to cut my table. I don't want to cut my table, so I had to push it out a little bit further. And here we go. So again, I've got my saw just resting up against that board that's acting like a fence. And you'll see my battery is dying. The funniest things happen, but hey, I got it done. I need to go charge my battery, first of all. But I'm admiring this. I have to say, this is a first for me. I have not made one of these before, so I'm winging it. But I put the board on here and I'm standing back looking at it going, okay, I think this is gonna work. And after putting it on there, I decided just having it across the front was not gonna cut it. So I decided I'm gonna make this base go wrap around all three sides. And I needed to miter these corners so I could make that happen. So I'm cutting this at a 45-degree angle. Now I only bought 2 boards. One long enough to go across the front and one to make 2 sides. I don't have any room for errors. I'm going very slow. This is a measure twice, cut once. This is more like measure 5 times and cut once. So I got that. I got both of those mitered on the end, cut at the 45-degree angle. And now I just have to figure out the side boards. So I cut the mitered in and now I'm just measuring it so I know how long I need to cut it. I made that cut and then let me dry fit it, but then I noticed there's this little ledge. I didn't even notice that before. Well, it's gonna keep my board from fitting flush. So I grabbed my Dremel, and this, again, don't try this at home. Or at least get the right bit for your Dremel because this is still the one that's for metal. I don't have a good cutting wheel for wood, but it was working. So I did it. And I just needed to make this like little trough on the side so that it will fit over that. And now my mitered edge will fit flush. Custom fitted. Yeah. So once I got all of that in there, I'm just checking now my lengths on everything and making sure everything's going to line up because I don't want any overhang. I get that clamped in there. I did the other side as well, clamped that, because I'm going to set the top first and glue this down and then the sides. Again, I'm winging this, and if someone says you should have done the sides first, just maybe, I don't know. But I'm just going, okay, well, they all fit clamped on here, so all I have to do is one at a time. Flip it up, put some glue on it, and then I got my brad nailer out, and I'm gonna set this with some brad nails. And I'm gonna do just a few to start. I went back and actually did several more. Of course, in the center as well. So between the glue and the nails, that should be on there. So I did the same thing on the sides. Now these never had any type of trim on the side. So this is an all new thing on the side. You can see where that panel was just absolutely plain all the way down to the floor. So I think this is a nice addition to have this little molded base on there. I did the same process, put the glue on there, clamped it back in place, and then putting the brad nails in there just to really get everything set into place. I don't think this is going to come off and go anywhere. Amazing how different it looks with that base. And I know some people will probably be upset that I took off the one with the curves, but modernizing something that just wasn't going to work. So, okay, my wood pate, it's wood filler. This is one of my favorite wood fillers from Farmhouse, and I love it. But that was just to fill in the nail holes, and here we are. I have a whole new base. I think it looks fantastic. Time to start sanding. Okay, just completely transitioning from the base. Now I need to prep the rest of the piece. So I've got 120 grit sandpaper on my sander, and I'm just gonna scuff everything. Now this is an old finish, but it was actually in pretty good shape. I didn't have to strip any of it, and now I'm just sanding down that wood filler that I put on that. And again, since I routed that and it's just raw wood from Home Depot. It all needed to be sanded. Amazing what you can do with just a plain board. Okay, I put my interface pad on there because now I need to sand all of the round edges. Just getting there was molding all over that was round, so it actually transitioned really well into that base. And now you can see the round edges of the top, and the interface pad just wraps around there, so that makes sanding so much easier. And again, down that side, the corner there. I also go in and sand the guides because it helps the drawers slide smoothly. Same process on all the drawers. I just sanded the flat parts down and then with the pad did all the way around. And then there were some little tiny nail holes. These are the pin holes from those little nails. And I'm just taking a spot putty. This is a Bondo product. It's called Glazing and Spot Putty. And using it to fill in any little scratches or things that didn't sand out. That product is great because it just sticks to everything. While that Bondo or that little spot putty is drying, I'm just going to now start cleaning everything. And I have a new base and it needs to be caulked. So if you were to just stain this piece, you could leave that little gap there, but when you're painting, that little gap looks horrible. So I just took some painter's caulk. This is nothing special. It's a $3 tube of painter's caulk. You don't want to use all silicone because you can't paint that, but this painter's caulk, of course, does have a little silicone in it, but it is the type that can be painted. I put that bead on there pretty heavy, but I am having to wipe it back, and I have a damp rag, and I just wipe it real quick with a damp rag and get everything nice and smooth. This is now dry, so I'm sanding all of that smooth. Time to get this cleaned up and prepped. Okay, those long screws will be my temporary handles, and get everything cleaned up, put those temp handles in, and here we are. I mean, it's not pretty yet, but I feel like we're making some good progress. Time to set up my spray tent. This is a big piece. It doesn't fit in my little bitty tent, and I just wanted some room for it. So wheeling it in, and time to make up my primer. Now, this is my favorite primer. I do have it tinted gray at the paint store. I add a little water to it so it will spray nicely. And here we go. Now, even though I'm going to be using an all-in-one paint, especially because I have just absolutely bare raw wood on the bottom, it really has to be primed. Even though my paint does have a primer in it, I'm priming anyway. So a nice, good, even coat of primer. I really like using this primer in particular because in between coats or after this dries, I'm going to be sanding, but this does need to dry now for some time. I think the recoat time on sticks is actually 2 hours. It's warm today. I don't know that it's going to take that long for it to dry, but I'm going to prep my paint while I'm waiting for that. Bold black. This is Farmhouse Evolution. It is an all-in-one paint. Even if it wasn't an all-in-one, it's my favorite. And I get back out there to do my sanding, and oh goodness. Yep, even I do it. I have an area with too much primer and it dripped. So I just took my carbide scraper and scraped those off of there. Now, had I noticed that when it was wet, I still would have let it dry because you don't want to mess with it when it's wet. Let it dry and then, sand it down smooth. It'll be just fine. Of course, I'm sanding the rest of it. When you paint something, especially with water-based primer, it raises the grain. This base especially was a little rough because it was the first time it's ever had a product on it, and the grain does pop out. And then a nice, good clean, dusting it off, getting ready for the next layer. Here we go. This is bold black, and it lives up to its name, nice and bold. This is one of the truest blacks that I've seen, and it is, black. It's so funny that you'd think that black is just black, but there's like 1,000 different shades of black, whether they're matte black or more gray, or they've got blue undertones. But I like this one because it just seems very true to black. And this being the first coat, it does go on. It's a solid black coat, but all of these streaks will even out a bit. in between coats, and once it's dry, I take all the drawers out because I need to touch up those little edges where the lip of the drawer just went over the cabinet there. Of course, the sprayer can't get behind it, so I have to do that by hand. But the inside of my cabinet, you'll see, is spotless. Now, if I decided I wanted to mask off the drawers and paint those outside and separate, I could, but then I'd have to mask off each opening over that dresser, or paint's going to be all over the inside on those drawer guides, and I don't want that. I love the look of it just being spotless inside. I'm sanding in between coats of paint, second coat of paint. Of course, I dusted after I sanded. Here we are. Beautiful. After that dried, I don't sand the last coat of paint. This is top coat. I did several layers of top coat. Everything dried. Now we're putting on some hardware. I love, love this hardware. It's one of my favorite knobs. And here's a look back at where we started. Now, it was pretty, but here we are now, and I think this is gorgeous. This is a timeless, beautiful piece. This is gonna fit so nicely with my client's decor, and I just think it looks so sophisticated and timeless. So it's amazing what you can do, again, with just a simple board, and to turn this into just something very elegant. So I hope you like this makeover. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and follow for more.